and we're going to review Pillar 4 and 5. And Pillar 4 is social value and ethics, and that's going to be reviewed and discussed by Vikki from Evans van der Line, followed by questions and answers. And Pillar 5 is corporate and environmental impact, and Maija from Metsa is going to introduce that, and followed by questions and answers. So over to you, Vikki. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Larkin. Good morning. There we go. So yeah, so we're having a look at social value this morning for Pillar 4. So next slide. That's it. So what is social value? Social value is the measure of a company beyond just its profits and overall economic status. So we're going to explore a little bit of what that means, which is when we're looking at social value, we're looking towards more of your staff well-being, investments in staff, environment also plays a part, supply chain, charities, volunteering.
I think so. I agree 100%.
And the local communities. So if we just get to the next slide. So with this slide, we're looking at why this is important. So it's, as you can see from some of the figures on this slide, it's now becoming more of a requirement in the job market. People are looking for companies that have a good social value when they're looking to change jobs. Companies buying are also looking, customers are also looking for.
Yes, thank you.
Excuse me, could whoever's not on mute, please go on mute.
How are you, mate?
Thank you.
Are you going, are you?
Please, could you mute?
How you doing? Feeling better?
Could you mute, please?
Good. Okay. You have a pen on you. Okay, excellent.
Is that you, Michelle? Okay, do you want to carry on?
Yeah. Yeah, so customers are also looking at companies' social values and looking for that they can trust and align their business with.
Make yourself comfortable.
So we go to the next.
Can you mute, please?
Anytime anyone has had time off sick, we do the return to work to make sure they're okay.
Yeah.
So the first part of the course is where
carry on, Vikki. I'm looking at
so we can fill this out. So if you have
next slide.
This one they haven't set you up on Cascade. I checked.
So where are we starting with social value? So I would start with the company's most valuable resource, which is staff. Without staff, we aren't going to be able to produce what our products. So we're looking at, ensuring the working conditions are good, that we have policies in place to protect our staff and uphold these policies, creating a culture where staff feel safe coming to work, enjoy it as much as possible, and foster positive behaviours across the.
Sorry.
It's all right. And foster positive behaviours across the business.
Okay.
And also the well-being of staff. Are we looking after them, possibly providing confidential helplines or health care? Next slide, please, Kathy. And then looking wider, we're looking into the local community, so adding social value projects to your environment, to your plans, would have a massive impact on the local community. Look for things that align with your company values and company ethos, and local companies supporting local community projects can also encourage staff engagement as they recognise the community projects that you're looking at, and in some cases can relate to the causes that you're looking at in your local community. So moving on from that, and we're looking to advance the social value. We're looking at the wider stakeholders of the business. So who, identify who your stakeholders are, both internally and externally. What is it they are wanting from your business? What's important to them? And try and align some of their issues to your business and to your social value of your company. It's never going to be possible to do all things for all stakeholders, but engaging with them with some of the more important targets that they are seeing creates more engagement through your social value supply chain. Next one. So then we're looking at procurement. So where are we buying things from? Where are we buying our supplies from? And are the companies that you are buying your supplies from ethical?
I'm here for the energy cluster.
Do they have policies in place? Are they paying their staff? And do they fit in with your company ethos? Are they a good supplier for your business? Look at seeing where they align into your business and into if they align with some of your social value projects that you have. Next. So we're looking towards further consideration. So social value is part of the wider subject of sustainability, which is why we're talking about it on our sustainability webinar. And as you can see from the little pictogram on the screen, the three pillars of sustainability do all interlock and have an effect on each other. So if you just skip to the next one, we're going to talk a little bit about environment. So environmental improvements are also linked to social value, as you saw in the pictogram, and creating a better environment by, for example, reducing air pollution, protects people, which can include your staff and their well-being, and creating green spaces, especially in industrial sites, can have a massive effect on people's health and well-being and mental health as well. Just giving your staff that place to go and have a break or and reset can be valuable and create better productivity through your business. Next one. So why are we doing social value? So it's not just the right thing to do, but it's now becoming more important in tendering. For example, we have seen NHS contracts coming through where social value is now 10% of the weighting of the contract. So if you have a strong social value within your company, you are ticking some boxes towards winning tenders, and this is coming through, like I said, in NHS, but in other government contracts as well, and being rolled down to some of the smaller contracts. It did originally start with just the more high value contracts for over 5 million, I think it was, but now it's rolling down and it's becoming
in 400 feet at the roundabout, turn right onto
the next one, Kathy.
Okay.
So there is support and certifications out there. There is a British standard which is available free from the British Standards website. You can check out the Behavioural Insights team and the Supply Chain Sustainability School. They all have great resources that you can align and help you on your social value journey. For certifications, we have Planet Mark, who are using the national TOMS guidance for their scoring system. So the TOMS guidance is themes, outcomes and measures, which are produced from national government targets and local governments. And then we also have B Corp certification which can help guide you on your journey to social value. I think that is it. A very quick roundup of social value.
Thank you, Vikki. Appreciate that, and apologies everyone for the noise interruptions as we're going along. We've got a couple of questions that we've had in relation to social values. One is the accreditations or certifications they should be looking for, which you've just covered off. I just wonder if there's anything else that springs to mind from any other members of the panel. But they were also asking, what are the key measures in this area against which we can evaluate our business and our suppliers? Anyone want to take that one?
So I suppose when you're looking at your suppliers and your business, look at your company values and ethics and what is important to your company first. There's also the national TOMs, which I briefly mentioned at the end of that, which is themes, outcomes and measures. You should be able to get resources like that through the government website usually, where you can see where your business aligns to some of the themes, and it can just sometimes give you some pointers as to, oh, that's something we could be doing, you know, and look a bit further into various topics.
The national TOMs are freely available to download, I believe, from the Social Value Portal website as well. So you can, as Vikki said, you can access all of those measures, and there are lots of them, and you can choose which one core to your business, and that tends to be the way that customers approach it as well. They choose the social value measures that are most aligned to the impact they want to see made on the communities that they care about, and then it's up to you when you're completing those kind of forms to find ways to align with their priorities. So you can do the same for your business and pick those priorities that align to your values and find the national TOM measures that fit that, so you can then work out that social value contribution.
Yeah, I totally agree with Annie and Vikki that it's a good starting point is your own company values. And then also, if you want to have a look of what kind of, for example, code of conduct for suppliers different companies have, they are all available in the websites. For example, we at Metsa Group, we have our code of conduct for suppliers. It's on our website, so everybody can have a look. And I think then by scoping, by looking at the references and then thinking about your own values, and as Anna said, what you want to achieve, then you can find the correct focus for your own company.
There's been a quick question about clarification. Is it TOMS, TOMS, or COM?
Yeah, TOMS stands for themes, outcomes and measures.
Brilliant, thank you. And there's another question. How do we, which kind of may align a bit, how do we make sure we work with organisations with the same values as us?
I suppose the way that I do it is we've produced a supplier questionnaire. So when we're looking for new suppliers, we send them our supplier questionnaire, which covers ethics as well as environment, quality, health and safety. It does cover some of the social value aspects as well. So we like to know that we are buying our supplies from a company that aligns with our values and ticks the majority of the boxes that we set out for them, at least.
We have the same procedure, so our supplier code of conduct, and then we send the questionnaire, and also do some auditing in like real life auditing to have a look what takes place in real life. So
yeah, I think as well, social value is still quite a new topic for this area, and while the national TOMs exist, there isn't a requirement to be consistent in how you report these things. So we're seeing lots of questions being asked in various different ways for the same information ultimately. And so I think there's still a lot of value if you're looking for suppliers or other partners that share your same priorities with social value, to have a conversation, because you can often find out a lot more by speaking to organisations about what they're doing and asking direct questions as well, because not all of it will be getting captured, and that's what we're learning as well. There's lots of great stuff happening that we're still learning how to measure.
Thank you very much. That's all the questions we've got for social value. So unless anyone of the panel's got anything else to add, it would be over to you, Maija, for corporate environmental impact.
Yeah, I just a brief comment on the social value. I really liked, Vikki, how you presented the different aspects of social values. So first of all, it's your staff, the supply chain, and then all the other stakeholders as well. And I do agree that actually it's, the company culture has a big impact, I think, all along your value chains. We, for example, at Metsa Group, we have actually had in place this kind of anonymous recruitment process for about 2 years now. It's not compulsory, but more and more of our business areas are taking into use, and it's quite interesting, this anonymous recruitment process. So kind of and I think it's also a sign that we really want to kind of how would I say, obey and support these DAY principles, so diversity, inclusion, and equality.
Thank you.
But I think regarding social values, I think by looking at companies' websites, you can get inspirations what have been done, and yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay.
Any other questions, or shall I start sharing my screen?
Crack on and share. We've covered the questions we've got here.
Okay, good. Okay, I suppose you can see my screen now. So good morning, everybody. My name is Maija Pohjakallio, and as said, I come from Metsa Group, where I have been working for about 2 years now. And it's a real pleasure to introduce the pillar 5, which is quite extensive, so corporate environmental impacts. My background is in chemistry, actually in science. I started my career as a researcher and teacher, but more than 10 years now I've been working within circular economy, bioeconomy, and sustainability related issues. So some insights. First of all, obviously, we think of corporations' environmental impacts. It's a very, very large topic, and it includes various elements. But the essential elements I'd like to highlight, and they also highlighted in the sustainability roadmap, they are greenhouse gas emissions, all scopes, scope 1, 2, and 3. And scope 1 means the direct emissions of companies' actions. Scope 2 means the indirect emissions from your purchased electricity. And scope 3 means then all the other upstream and downstream emissions. And especially scope 3 is really emerging. And actually in EU, we have this new corporate sustainability reporting directive, which will soon come into force. And according to that, companies are actually obliged to also report their scope 3 emissions. So companies are expected also to take responsibility over the value chain, so not only on their own actions. Then, in addition to greenhouse gas emissions, obviously waste is really important topic, and the reduction of waste, and especially the target should be that there wouldn't be any waste that goes to landfill. And water use, especially in our sector, is of course very important topic. So water efficiency and circular ways of utilizing water. And again, I would like to highlight within this pillar and all other pillars that strategic and systematic approach is really the key. So you can start step by step, start gathering data, setting targets, and then start following the proceedings. And while you start measuring and following the proceedings, actually then you learn all the time. And you can really start with small, and then it just expands your actions and targets as well. And especially when we are dealing with scope 3, collaboration is also key. So what I think is a good thing in this, for example, this corporate reporting directive in EU is good that it somehow encourages, or in a way forces companies to collaborate more along the value chain. Okay, then some practical examples from Metsa Tissue. First of all, Metsa Tissue is very much focused on minimizing the product carbon footprints, mostly by using fresh Nordic fibers, which originate from sustainably managed northern forests. And we at Metsa Tissue have done life cycle analysis, calculated the carbon footprint and compared the carbon footprint with, for example, toilet paper that are produced with fresh fibers compared to toilet papers which are utilized, which are produced made by recycled fibers. Then at the moment, the share of fossil-free energy at Metsa Tissue's production is around 50%. And as you can see, that we also pay a lot of attention to utilization of side streams and have already reached a quite nice target in there. Even though the figures look quite good, then we are really committed to continuous improvement, because we know that sustainability is a journey, and I think you can never say that you have reached the goal in sustainability. There are always steps to be taken. So we have ambitious 2030 targets in place. For example, one of our main targets is that by 2030 all our mills would be fossil free. Meaning that they wouldn't use any fossil raw materials, no fossil energy. And this fossil-free target is also valid in our mill to be built in UK. Probably you have heard that Metsa Tissue has made the investment decision to build a new tissue paper mill in East Riding, Yorkshire. And that one as well has this fossil-free target by 2030. Regarding UK, Metsa Tissue has a UK-specific carbon reduction plan, which can be found in Metsa Tissue's webpage. So in case you want to get some inspirations about the targets and also about some projects which are ongoing regarding carbon reductions, have a look at the carbon reduction plan. One action which I'd like to share, which is actually quite new also in our action portfolio, is that we have made common sustainability targets with our suppliers. For example, with some marine transportation companies, then with the National Railway Company in Finland, and other ones as well. So we commit together with our partners to reduce, for example, the emissions from marine transportation, from train transportation, and I think that's really how would I say expanding action. More and more we are doing these common commitments, sustainability commitments with our partners. And then another practical example about sustainability actions. Obviously, when we talk about corporate sustainability and environmental impact, we very often talked only about the production, which of course is very important, that we try to make the production as sustainable as possible. But also if we think of sustainability in a large scale, it's also a lot about the consumption. So how could companies give also customers and even consumers tools to promote sustainable consumption? And this is one example. Metsa Tissue has in place this Catherine calculator, and it helps the customers to minimize not only cost, but also consumption and CO2 footprint. So there you can see the framework of the calculator. So you can feed in your needs, and then the calculator suggests a suitable combination of tissue papers, dispensers, etc., to minimize not only your cost but also your CO2 footprint. Okay, so that was that, and looking forward to discussion.
Thank you very much, Maija. So we've got a couple of questions. We've got a few questions on this, to be honest. Are there, and this is at a sort of very basic level, I guess, a straightforward intro level. What are the essential steps I should be taking now to improve both energy efficiency and to cut carbon emissions? Anyone want to?
Depends on what you're doing.
Okay. Well, I guess what should I be looking at then as a start? Where should I?
So I suppose with a lot of manufacturing, and Maija and Vikki might be a better place to add detail to this, but there's often heat and water waste involved in manufacturing processes. So anything you can do to reduce that or conserve that heat or find another way to reuse it in your operation. Same with water as well. To be responsible users of the resources you need can help to reduce your emissions and your overall environmental impact.
Yeah, I think for me, you need to get a good measure first. We need to be able to measure what we are using now before, and look at some of your high target areas, like Anna was saying, you know, heat, water usage, and electricity. You can find some quick wins in some of these topics when you start measuring and start looking at where you are using, for example, your energy. You know, get some measure. You can get things that you attach to cables that will tell you how much energy that particular piece of kit is drawing, and if there's various improvements that can be made. For example, we have ovens on site, and we're measuring how much energy they're drawing to see whether we can put timers on them so that they get switched off at various points during the week without affecting the products in them. So yeah,
I totally agree. The data is the basis of everything. So when you start collecting the data, then you can also set long-term and short-term targets, which I find both of them really, really important. And even though the targets wouldn't be ambitious in the beginning, I think it's really important to have the target, because I think that's the way the human mind also operates, that when you have a target, you are somehow more, how would I say, concentrated on the goal as well. And this target setting is also coming very important along the value chain, because now when we start also measuring and reporting scope 3, there might even be kind of a tenders, or your customers might actually ask for you, what are your targets? And for example, in UK, it's in place that you cannot participate some of the governmental tenders if you don't have in place this carbon reduction plan, and if you are not committed to net zero target by 2050 in the UK. So yeah, I think that's really important to start gathering the data and then setting targets.
Okay. We've had a question about that sort of sits with that. How do I find out more about my water usage is the question, and how do I reduce it? But I guess it extends to, is there a best way with waste, with water, or how do I work out what because we're saying find a baseline. How do I work out what my baseline is?
Theory, you should be paying for the energy and the water you're using, and hopefully on that bill there will either be an estimated or actual number of kilowatt hours or meters cubed of what you've used, and that's a great place to start. If you don't have that information available, then you need to speak to your landlord or your provider, depending on your situation, see if you can get hold of that information, because it will be somewhere.
Okay. Another one is lots of companies partner with carbon offsetting projects. Is that valuable or just a tactic for not having to make any changes?
This is a very good question. I think we think at Metsa Group that always in the climate work, the focus should be in emission reductions. So that's the most important thing, and I think that's also what the International Panel of Climate Change and the scientists say. So focus on the emission reductions, but then obviously there are probably some residual emissions. And in that case, how would I say, if you have offsetting project which really are transparent and of quality, then they might come into question. But for example, in EU, there is now a law on green claims, which is under development, and that will really state that you cannot, for example, claim carbon neutrality if it's only based on offsetting. And then also when you do offsetting, you have to be careful whether the project you invest in, whether they only cause emission reductions, for example, changing from fossil energy into renewable, or whether they are really carbon removals. So whether they really reduce the amount of atmospheric CO2, for example, by capturing CO2 from the flue gases. So also because there are a lot of different kinds of carbon credits on the market, and some of them are better than the others. So you have to be very careful if you are using offsetting, and always ask the question, is it a real removal or emission reduction, and then the transparency things. I'm following this EU legislation in my work, so that's why I could give another presentation on this, but I won't. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Maija, on that. I think carbon offsetting is only really paying the problem away. It's not solving climate change. It's not helping ultimately as much as we need the action to happen at home. And I don't mean in our personal homes, I mean where you directly influence, whether that's your immediate supply chain or your own business. That's where the work needs to start. Carbon offsetting could be a nice way to support projects that are doing important work, and as Maija said, if they're of good quality and you know what they're doing, but I would never consider them as the savior of this situation. I think that the focus has to be on what we can actually change. And if anyone is looking at science-based targets and wants to be signed off by a science-based targets initiative, that will include a commitment to reduce your actual emissions by 90% and only offset the residual 10% of emissions. So there has to be that change directly in your scope 1 and 2 and 3.
Is there sorry, Vikki, carry on.
No, I was just agreeing, absolutely.
But I think I just add one thing. You have to be very careful also as a consumer and customer to find out what's behind the green claims that have been stated. Because at the moment, as I said, in Europe, the legislation is under development. But really, I think at the moment, the situation is not that clear. So there are also some claims on the market which are not that credible.
Now, I was just going to ask you, talking about the EU legislation, does anyone know if there's something similar coming in the UK?
I haven't seen anything.
No, not on the carbon offsetting piece. Don't know if we would follow what the EU is doing, but there's not been any real noise on that.
Okay.
I think the best thing we have in the UK in this kind of sphere is the Green Claims Code, and it is worth knowing what that's about, because your suppliers, the people you're buying from, should be following the Green Claims Code in any marketing the claims they're making.
Well,
yeah, in EU there are several pieces of legislation. There's also legislation under development, a legal framework for the certification of carbon removals. So the Commission wants to build up a system that it can certify, so that the Commission can certify certain projects for carbon removals. And it's almost finalized, the first piece of the legislation, and that will only recognize like true removals. So those emission reductions if you carry out a project that only causes emission reductions, then you cannot certify it under the EU process.
It's worth at this point just noting that the Green Claims Code is incorporated within the CHSA's Code of Practice. So every member of the CHSA has signed up to the Competition and Markets Authority's Green Claims Code as part of being a member. We've just had a quick question in that's related to this in the chat. There's been recent talk of scope 4. Can you explain this further and give an understanding of when this will start to become more visible and we will need to incorporate this into our plans anytime soon. Is that anything anyone knows about?
I was just in the morning in a meeting where we discussed about scope 4. So I can start with, first of all, to my understanding, there's no official definition for scope 4 yet. But for example, what it includes is that with scope 4, you can somehow show if you have positive impacts, for example, on your clients, this so-called handprint. So for example, if your customer uses your product instead of another product and then finds emission reductions in that, then you are certainly kind of causing a handprint for your customer, so emission reduction, and that can be regarded as one element of scope 4. So this kind of positive impacts that you can cause in the value chain. But to my understanding, the scope 4 is, well, it's not certainly under yet in reporting rules, but I do agree that it's an emerging issue. And I think in the future, we will be definitely discussing about scope 4, because in general, if we think about sustainability, very often we define sustainability is that we want to reduce the negative impact of our actions in the environment. For us, for example, we at Metsa Group, we have been more and more trying to focus on also what are the positive impacts, what we can cause. So kind of the regenerative way to operate to manage the forest, the regenerative way to do the production, and also the regenerative way in value chains. But I think this handprint is one aspect of scope 4.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Maija. That's my understanding. I think scope 4 is meant to be a negative number. So you're reducing emissions or you're removing emissions through the use or application of your product is how I understand it. And I think that's pretty much aligned to what you understand, Maija. So I think we're on the same page.
Yeah.
I do think that if we put too much pressure on scope 4 at the moment, we'll be running before we can walk, because we're all still grappling with scope 3. And that's a huge challenge that we're still trying to wrap our heads around. Scope 4 is a positive thing to be including, but as yet it is a really new area of understanding. I've only seen any scope 4 data come from one chemical supplier, so it's very new, very emerging. I think we also need to make sure we can do scope 1, 2 and 3 first.
This is a question anyway, facing the challenge of competitors projecting a green image while offshoring the least environmentally friendly parts of their supply chain, how can domestic businesses who are upfront about the impact that they're having secure a competitive position? So this is a kind of a voice of frustration, if you like, perhaps from UK businesses. Have you got any advice or guidance on that?
I mean, anyone operating in the UK really should be following the Green Claims Code when they're marketing the products and putting statements out there. It doesn't always happen. We have found various companies that we've, when you're trying to look into how this green claim has been made on certain aspects, we can't find any data, and there have been some big companies that have been challenged. I think Lipton Tea was one recently over some of the claims they'd made about the plastic in the bottles. So there are the CMA do look at green claims and green adverts and try to uphold. They do make some companies take down certain green claims, but with I suppose in the smaller businesses and cleaning industry is probably slightly less visible at the moment. It's probably not being targeted yet, but hopefully it will come through.
I think engagement is key as well. If you know that you have all the correct information and you can be transparent with your customers or your end users, then making sure that they see that information from you might prompt them to ask the questions of others. So you're giving them the knowledge and the questions to go back to other people with. And as a consumer, I think the best thing that you can do is go into these conversations with a critical mind and ask to see more information, ask to understand what's behind a claim. Don't just accept things blindly.
Interrogation sounds like it's a bit, or inquiring and challenging the claims that presented to you by your supplier sounds like it's quite a bit of a theme. Always challenge, always ask for evidence, always ask for more information. Is that, that essentially the message?
Yeah, I totally agree, because you can also always ask the data that is behind the claim. So I think that's a really good approach. Obviously it takes some time, but I think it's worth taking the time and really demanding that the claims are transparent.
Thank you. There's one more question which aligns to this a bit really. Who are the preferred and most relevant accreditation organisations for UK businesses to invest in to achieve certification? So I guess that's helpful for both sides. What are the certifications or accreditations that suppliers need to be aiming to get, and that buyers should be looking to make sure that their suppliers have? Are there any that stand out more than others?
I suppose there's no requirements really for certifications. A lot of companies look at the ISO standards, 14001, being the one for environment. That to maintain that promotes continuous improvement. So you have to be looking at continuous improvement projects within your business. So it's find something that aligns to your company values. We personally here at Evans we use Planet Mark. We found that it aligned quite nicely to what we were trying to do and what we were trying to achieve. But yeah, finding something that aligns to what it is as a company you're wanting to measure, wanting to promote, and how you're wanting to progress.
And I think you'll find there'll be different accreditations for different product areas. So for obviously for timber paper products, you'd be looking for something that was FSC certified or had the European eco label. So I think it's really understanding what it is that you're buying or selling and looking, more specifically.
Yeah, I think this is a really, really good comment. So whether you're looking at the product side and which product or the production, we as well at Metsa Group, we have this ISO standard, ISO 14000 standard for our production sites. But then obviously, then you have different standards for the products and different standards for the forest. And it depends. But I think also a good thing is to look at the references also. If you work with a certain certifier, for example, most of the LCA calculations for our products have been done by third-party consultants. So look at the references of your partners you are working with, or the accreditation organizations. I think that's also a good tips.
I think it depends as well on if you're looking for a business level accreditation or you're looking for green product marks and eco labels, because there are whole rafts of them out there, and as Lydia said, it does depend on your product type, what you're trying to apply it to as well, and they come with various different qualities and different scopes of what they're capturing as well. And so I think you have to really understand what aligns to what you need and what you want to have been measured or presented about a product. We're in a bit of a difficult position in the UK where the EU eco label hasn't been replaced, but the EU eco label is no longer applicable for UK manufacturers. So if you don't have a EU operation, you can't get an EU eco label, but it's still relevant on the market. It's still something that consumers are looking for, and it's because it's a very reputable mark to hold. So it is difficult that we haven't got something that's equivalent to that you can get if you're UK only, as far as I know. We've tried to do a bit of work on that within BCHS Bunzl. We've developed a product award, which is our way of sustainability scoring products. So we look at the manufacturers, but we also look at specific criteria to do with the products themselves. And we've done this in an objective way. So it's not, it's there to guide consumers on sustainability-led decision making. It doesn't, you know, there's no bias in there towards particular suppliers or product types. It really is just about reflecting the best bits of where products are doing things to be more sustainable, to support end users in making those decisions, because there isn't a lot out there to do that at the moment.
Thank you. That covers all the questions that we've had. Is there, and we're on time now, so if there's anything that the panel, just as a parting comment after both webinars, would like to say, that'd be great. But if not, thank you.
Yes, and just like to thank Lydia from Essity, and again from Bunzl, and Vikki from Evans van der Leyen, and Maija from Metsa Group. And thank you for your support and your time this morning and on Monday for the CHSA. Thank you very much.